While millions of people are losing their minds every weekend, screaming at referees, painting their faces in team colors, crying over a last-second missed field goal, there's a surprisingly large group of people who just don't care at all. They see the Super Bowl hype, the World Cup frenzy, the endless bar arguments about who's the greatest of all time, and their internal reaction is basically, cool. Anyway, and here's the thing most people never admit out loud. According to neuroscience and personality research, their brains really are wired differently. Not broken. Not boring. Just playing a completely different emotional game. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will forever change how you look at the sports-obsessed people in your life, and how you understand yourself if you've always been the one who quietly checks out during game day. First, let's kill the stereotypes right away. Not caring about sports does not mean you lack passion. It does not mean you're antisocial. It does not mean something's wrong with you. In fact, the latest psychological data suggests the opposite in many cases. But there are real, measurable differences in how these two groups experience belonging, reward, identity, and even meaning itself. Let's start with the easiest question. Why do so many people care so damn much about sports? The answer lives deep in our evolutionary wiring. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans survived by belonging to tight-knit tribes. Your tribe was literally life and death. They hunted with you, protected you from predators, helped raise your children. Being accepted by the group meant you lived. Being cast out usually meant you died. Fast forward to today. We no longer have saber-toothed tigers, but our brains still crave that ancient tribal rush. Modern professional sports are the closest thing we've invented to safe, ritualized tribal warfare. When you root for your team, your brain releases oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that floods you when you hug your child or fall in love. A famous 2017 study out of the University of Haifa showed that fans watching their team play experienced oxytocin spikes almost identical to what happens during intimate family moments. Their brain literally tricks them into feeling that these millionaire strangers in jerseys are part of their tribe. Now flip the camera. People who don't obsess over sports tend to have what researchers call lower affiliative need or weaker tribal identification. Their sense of self isn't as tightly tethered to group membership. They're more likely to answer the classic identity question, who are you? With individual traits, personal projects, relationships, values, creative pursuits, rather than, I'm a die-hard Patriots fan, or, I bleed Dodger blue. A 2020 meta-analysis published in the Journal of Personality found that individuals with low interest in spectator sports consistently scored lower on measures of group-based identity fusion and higher on self-concept clarity. Translation: they don't need to borrow glory from a winning team to feel whole. But here's where it gets really interesting, and a little concerning for the superfans. When a die-hard fan watches a close game, their brain lights up like a casino. Every possession, every play, every near miss or comeback attempt triggers a fresh hit of dopamine, the anticipation reward chemical. fMRI studies, notably a landmark 2018 paper from University College London, show that watching your team in a nail-biter activates the nucleus accumbens and ventral striatum, the exact same reward circuitry that fires during gambling, cocaine use, and even orgasm. And the real addiction engine? Uncertainty. You don't know if your team is going to win. That intermittent, unpredictable reward schedule is the single most addictive pattern psychology has ever identified. It's why slot machines keep people pulling levers for hours. It's why sports keep people emotionally hooked for decades. The brain doesn't care that the outcome is ultimately meaningless for your actual life. It just wants the next dopamine hit. People who don't care about sports, their reward system simply doesn't get triggered by vicarious competition. The plays, the stats, the rivalries, they register as neutral information instead of emotional rocket fuel. And yes, there's growing evidence this difference might be partly genetic. A 2022 study from the University of Chicago's Behavioral Genetics Lab identified variations in the DRD2 and DRD4 dopamine receptor genes that predicted how intensely people responded to competitive spectator events. In plain English, some people are literally born less likely to get hooked on the sports drama roller coaster. Then there's the famous Berging phenomenon, basking in reflected glory. When the team wins, fans say, "We won." When the team loses, they distance themselves, "They blew it." Pronoun switches happen in milliseconds. Non-sports obsessed people show almost none of this pronoun shifting. Their self-esteem doesn't ride the same emotional elevator. Their sense of worth is more internally anchored, less dependent on outcomes they can't control. Okay, before half the comment section starts yelling at me, I'm not saying one group is superior. I'm saying they are psychologically distinct, and both ways of being make perfect evolutionary and emotional sense. Here's something that actually surprises a lot of people. Sports superfans often score higher on certain empathy measures. They practice intense, vicarious caring. They feel genuine pain when their quarterback gets injured, genuine joy when the underdog wins. They've trained their mirror neurons to fire for strangers in uniforms. Non-sports people don't necessarily lack empathy, they just allocate it differently. Everyone has a finite capacity for deep emotional investment. If you're not spending it on 22 guys chasing a ball, you're probably pouring it into close friendships, family, social justice causes, creative work, learning for its own sake, the natural world, philosophical questions. A 2023 longitudinal study from the University of British Columbia found that adults with low to moderate sports interest scored significantly higher on openness to experience, aesthetic sensitivity, and appreciation of beauty. They get their transcendent, spine-tingling moments from art, music, literature, nature documentaries, deep conversations, scientific breakthroughs, the list goes on. Same emotional hunger, different menu. And we have to be honest about something darker, too. For some people, indifference to sports is partly a defense mechanism. Maybe they were the kid always picked last in gym class. Maybe they grew up in a house where sports talk felt like the only acceptable language and they never learned it. Maybe they felt subtly, or not so subtly, excluded by the aggressive masculinity often baked into sports culture. Maybe they just watched grown adults lose entire weekends to games and quietly decided, that's not how I want to spend my finite attention. All of those are valid origin stories. None of them make the indifference less real or less legitimate. So what's the deepest philosophical difference here? It comes down to how you find meaning and narrative in a chaotic world. Sports superfans find meaning in epic narrative arcs. The comeback story, the dynasty, the bitter rivalry, the revenge tour, the underdog miracle. It's real-time mythology with genuine emotional stakes. The unpredictability is exactly what makes it gripping. Real life is usually far more boring and controllable. Sports give you concentrated drama. People who don't obsess over sports often look at that same drama and think, why would I invest so much emotion in an outcome I can't influence, performed by people I'll never meet, in a contest that has zero material impact on my life? They're not wrong. They're just wired to seek narrative and meaning through direct participation rather than spectatorship. They want to be the protagonist of their own story, not an invested audience member in someone else's. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who literally wrote the book on flow states, found that the experience of total absorption and transcendence, being in the zone, can happen through almost any activity that matches skill and challenge. For some, that's watching a fourth-quarter comeback. For others, it's writing code, playing an instrument, hiking alone at sunrise, solving a difficult philosophical problem, or having a 3-hour conversation that changes how they see the world. Same psychological reward, different delivery system. And here's the quiet radical part. People who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more present in their actual lives. They're not spending 3 hours every Sunday living someone else's struggle, someone else's triumph. They're spending those hours inside their own story. So if you're someone who's never understood why grown adults paint their faces and scream at televisions, you're not missing some essential piece of being human. You're just playing a different game, one with potentially higher personal stakes. Your reward system, your tribal instincts, your empathy budget, your sense of identity, they're all tuned to a different frequency. And that frequency is just as valid. The next time someone asks you, did you catch the game last night, and you genuinely have no idea what they're talking about, smile quietly to yourself. You're not defective. You're not boring. You're just built for a different kind of drama, one that might matter more in the long run. If this hit home, you're probably going to love the next one. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notification for the next video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.